Hey everybody, I'm Brigham Rupp. This is David Rupp, and we're here to talk a little bit today about the story of drift. So we're brothers. David is the creator, and along with his wife, co-owner and owner of Drift. They're a team, and I help out with, I guess you could say, brand manager duties. And I'm going to ask him some questions and let him tell the story a little bit of how Drift came to be. So to get started, we're here in Utah. This is where you grew up, currently in Salt Lake City. Tell us a little bit about your background and your experience with snowboarding and with the mountains in general that would lead you to eventually want to, dive into a product in the backcountry.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of key things that we really, because this story kind of starts before Drift, Briggs included. We grew up in a home where the outdoors was a big part of our life. My mother's parents were big time skiers, and her brother and sisters, and then my dad's family was way outdoors in hunting and things like that. So we were just always outside. We were always playing in the snow, having fun that way. A couple of my dad's brothers were big into snowboards, and they kind of influenced us. And Brig got a snowboard when he was 11.
Yeah,
and I was 8. And I remember the first time that we used that snowboard. Well, Brig used it. I pushed him around the yard on like an inch of grass. It was
inch of snow on the grass. Yeah.
Inch of snow on the grass, right? It was basically grass.
Right. Just enough to slide.
Just enough to slide. I'm sure Brig let me have a go at it, but I don't remember that part. I just remember pushing him.
We were super excited about a snowboard.
But that quickly morphed into something that we were doing constantly. We lived in a place that was at a slight hill, but not enough of a hill, and we were able to tow each other in my dad's field on a four-wheeler. And Brig could always tow me a little bit better than I could tow him, just because he weighed a little bit more and got a little more traction with this two-wheel drive four-wheeler that we were kicking around. And so we started hitting jumps and building rails, and if we weren't getting towed behind the four-wheeler, we could walk through a couple of fields and get to a little hill that we'd walk up and down. And then we started to pester our parents, who were really into cross-country skiing. Hey, let's go cross-country skiing. So on Saturday, we'd go boot pack a jump, and they'd go cross-country ski, and we just started spending a lot of time in the backcountry. And then in the summers, we'd be skateboarding and riding bikes and doing that kind of fun stuff. And then, I think there's one more important piece to add there, is that we would do our best to try and get a ski pass whenever we could. My folks weren't as keen on, they're always like, oh, if you save your money, we'll drive you up and drop you off. And that was kind of how it was. So we'd usually have a friend's parents pick us up, and my parents would drop us off, or vice versa. And if we got a couple of passes to the ski hill a year, we were stoked.
Yeah, it was rare.
And it was bell to bell when we would do it.
Yeah, it was rare. And we'd put like a granola bar in our pocket. And I remember, as soon as the lift opened, never stop. And I remember one time in particularly, having fevered hallucinations that night because I was so destroyed.
That night,
because we also weren't physically.
The next day would be the same way. I also remember just not being experienced with how the ski resort works. I remember one day we were just bombing this big hill on a big powder day, and as the day got on, it kind of revealed the hill to us. And it was like a black diamond, and we were young, and it was just we just went for it. We didn't know what we were doing, but it always was fun, and there was definitely sore muscles and backs. And in the backyard, Brig would whip me on this four-wheeler to flat landings. We just wrecked our bodies, but it was fun.
Yeah, we didn't really know about landings and transitions at the time. We built good wedges, but yeah.
So that was kind of like the youth time, and that as time went on, I started riding snowboards for some of the local shops, just real grassroots. And it was good, but it started to kind of get us into the scene a little bit, and we'd go to all the snowboard shows, and just became a part of like where we lived and the culture of snowboarding at the time.
Ended up working in shops.
Yep.
All that stuff. In just maybe a few words that come to mind. I mean, obviously snowboarding like captured your mind and heart. It did for me too. It was just like, even before I ever did it, when I first saw it, it was an old Mac Dog movie that our uncle brought home. But I was just like, I have to do this.
Yeah.
What, in a couple of words, what was it that really caught you? Because we did a lot of stuff outside, but the snowboarding really.
And I just sliding sideways, the feeling that you get on powder. I know when we first started, it probably wasn't that. Like, it was just the speed has always been something for me. I also kind of like gymnastic stuff, and like getting there was part of it for sure. Like just being in the air and doing some of those things. It was the whole culture,
the whole vibe,
and all of it wrapped up into pretty good experience as youth.
But hidden in there was the fact that earning your turns was fundamental, like from the very beginning. I mean, even in high school.
I mean, I guess I can't understate what it was like to go out with your parents who are on cross-country skis, and we're talking Wasatch snow, hip, deep powder days where we're just lugging a board up the hill, time after time. We'd build a kicker and we just boot pack. We were out there in the snow, in the deep snow, into zones that we didn't see in the movies.
Yeah, we didn't think about avalanches ever. Nobody ever said anything like, you need to be careful out there. And I think back to like what it took to walk up those hills, and I kind of can't believe that we did it. But it speaks to like
we were devoted,
how committed we were to doing it. I mean, if there was enough snow to slide, we were on it. If we had to drive to the very tops of the hills, once we got old enough to drive ourselves, or in the foothills or wherever. So okay, so you're probably like anybody else who gets into snowboarding and thinks maybe I can like make some money doing this.
I think I could if I would have pursued it. I was okay, but there were other things that were taught at home that were important to me. Schooling was right up there. I had a grandma that was just really encouraging of schoolwork and some of that stuff. And so I knew that I wanted to like pursue some schoolwork. I also was I wasn't by no means going to become a professional, but we were doing big tricks and doing inverted stuff. And we would like get some influence from Salt Lake City, where we grew up is 2 hours north. And so we weren't like with the biggest crowd, but yeah, I had dreams of being professional or doing something like that. It may not have been realistic. It may have been, riding for different shops and stuff. It definitely makes you think about it at least. But with some of the other stuff, I thought, well, I just had the feeling that I might not enjoy the lifestyle perfectly. And so I thought, I'm going to go and become an engineer to work on snowboards. And that was just what I thought my junior year. And it kind of paved the way for me and my engineering and kind of where I was headed. Fast forward a few years, I kind of made that goal to go to school and pursue that. I took a couple years off to serve a mission, and then when I came back and got into school, school kind of took over. and it was hard to get turns. Like I at this point could afford getting a season pass and still worked at the shop some, and so I had good equipment. But just from an engineering perspective, it took a lot of my time. And then upon graduation from engineering, I still wanted to work in the outdoor sporting goods, but snowboarding wasn't like the number one focus. It was kind of like, how do I get into the world and start making some money after paying for school for so long? So I did a little stint in medical devices, which was actually really good because it taught me some core engineering stuff that, was very helpful, particularly how to run CNCs and how to design for CNC and things like that. I'm getting further along.
No, you're good. So go from there.
Right.
What else about your education or work experience led up to being able to design and develop the drift boards?
Yeah, so I'm still snowboarding on the weekends when I can. Graduate, start to think about things more than I had in the past about like design and how things work. Quickly learned that the medical field wasn't for me, even if the money was really great. It was really type A and go, and we'd spend all day, in labs, in buildings with no windows and working on different devices, which were good and meaningful. But I wanted to change up, and so I went and worked for a company called Envy Composites. If you're familiar with that, they manufacture bike wheels, composite carbon fiber wheels and handlebars and stems. And one of the first projects I had was a stem that went on to the, downhill World Cup, syndicate team. And so I started to get experience not only designing, but I'm also riding bikes. And so I started to think about like what we could design and things like that. And then I went and worked for this bike company. And while I was working for the bike company, we would go on lunch rides every day and test the equipment that we were building. Well, that worked amazing for the summer, but in the winter things would slow down, and I still wanted to go and get that exercise, go out, get out during the lunchtime. And a friend of mine and I had the specific idea for the drift boards, and we designed some prototypes and we were using them. And the kind of the novelty of that was I was able to leverage some of this bike composite skill into a package that allowed me to get out on the daily in a short amount of time. Like that was my goal when I first started with drift boards, was how can I, for a lunch break, get a lap in? And the ski resort was all the work, but just not as fulfilling. Like I was kind of looking for some exercise too, and that's kind of where the drift boards idea started to get the ball rolling with it. But over time, the product refined in a way that was like, maybe someone else would like this. And there was some real convenience to it. You don't have to take off your skin at the top of the hill. You don't have any of that changeover time. And it got simple.
And you got into POW surfing somewhere in there too, right?
And we started to POW surf, and POW surf was super simple. I mean, there would be times that I'd be on a time crunch and I'd like throw some gaiters over some shoes, grab the POW surf and drift boards and go hike. It was just so easy. And then we just thought, hey, maybe more people would be interested in this.
All right, so you got this kind of backyard prototype you're playing with. You got the capacity to turn it into something legit. How did you go from messing around in the garage to a brand?
So we didn't have a lot of money, but I did have like good experience on like how to see if people were interested. Really, we just wanted to test and see if people were interested. So we threw it up on Kickstarter and said, hey, does anybody else want these? I had developed like a spreadsheet that told me like where my break-even numbers were, and we hit the numbers that we needed to make a first production run worth it. And so we launched. And when I say we at this point, my wife was excited about helping out, and so she jumped in to do the accounting. So
it's pretty much you two. Then you end up eventually you get some good guys to help in the shop.
A couple of guys in the shop, and in the winter we usually hire a few more. as a seasonal job and just make some boards. And
then I jumped in with social media and website and pretty much whatever they asked me to do. So, okay. So, two-part question. What's one of the highlights that's happened to you guys as a brand since you started, and what's your biggest challenge?
Yeah. It's always a highlight for me when I run into the product on the hill. You know, like, dude, that was a drift board that just like rode past me. I'm generally pretty quiet about it. I'm not like going to toot the horn and be like, hey, you know. In fact, I might ask them some questions like, do you love it? Do you hate it? What do you like about it? You know, when they don't know who I am. But it's always a highlight. Challenge, you know, just short on a challenge. I'm like keen to focus on things. I mean, it's always a challenge to help people see the vision of what drift really can be, you know, and even myself, we started out just with a product that for me was a lunch break product. And then you like took it to the next level and we're like, dude, and all of a sudden last year we're hiking like 7,000 feet Mount Shasta with these things that were initially designed to help me ride a PAL surf or get on a lunch break, you know? So it's been pretty fun actually.
Yeah, those are good highlights, and you know, a proper challenge. We've had some cool experiences with other people and brands in the industry that are exciting. We've had some of our heroes on the product.
I mean, for sure, it's a highlight for me to be working with Burton, you know, and originally it was Jake that rode the product, you know, that helped us with the Mine 77 collab. Like, that's a highlight for sure.
To have them, to remember, like, there's somebody in Japan on these things right now. There's someone in New Zealand. There's someone in the Alps. That's fun.
Pretty exciting.
And at least for me, I would note just, like, backcountry equipment is complicated and nuanced, and there's a ton of variables. And just tell them the story of the drift boards and, like, why they're awesome. That's challenging. Until someone just uses them or sees them, and then they're like, oh, that makes sense. These are awesome, which I think our reviews like back that up. But on the internet,
and that's been hard for me because I'm not a storyteller, really. You know, I mean, I'm a designer and someone who loves to snowboard.
Yeah, it makes sense. Here it is. Like, why would you not understand that it makes sense? So.
Exactly. Like, oh, you don't know that it's nice to have.
Cool.
Yeah. Anyways.
So it's for sure our most faithful customers that have watched to the end of this. What do you want to say to them before we wrap up?
Thank you. Like, I'm just incredibly grateful, especially for those who supported us in the Kickstarter. For those that are just getting into it, you know, I'm grateful for feedback. I look for it so that we can make the product better. Some designers don't love that, but I'm about it. But I'm just grateful for snowboarding and for the support of my family that is helping me run drift, and my kids who deal with, you know, small business owner dad. So,
yeah, I mean, in the end, it really is about getting anybody out there who thinks, hey, that looks like a cool way for me to enjoy backcountry. In the end, it's just sharing that. Like, we love it out there. This is a fun way to do it. Maybe you'll love it too. So,
thank you.
Come be a part of it. Thanks, Dave.
Happy snow days.